No matter who you are, there is a leech attached to you, sucking away at your life force while you try to carry on as usual. You might feel guilty about some past mistake. It could be a change you know you should make, but you can't ever seem to overcome the inertia. For a lot of us, it's the weight of a world where nothing seems to be going right, and there's nothing you can do to fix it. What would you give to be rid of that leech? This is Cosmic Goblins, a fiction podcast specializing in dark speculative fiction, from cosmic horror to sci-fi to sword and sorcery and everything in between. One thing I love about speculative fiction is its ability to manifest monstrous, lofty concepts in tangible ways. You can explore dark ideas in stories that are downright fun, even if they still make you uncomfortable. Sasha Brown has done just that in today's story. Our leeches may not be literal, but for the characters in The Malcontents, they very much are. And my God, are they disgusting. The Malcontents is adapted from issue 69 of Cosmic Horror Monthly, which came out just a few weeks ago. Listeners, be aware that this episode contains both body horror and some sexual content. Stick around after the story for a brief chat with the author. Well, we don't want to keep our leeches waiting, so let's dive in. Cosmic Goblins presents The Malcontents by Sasha Brown. The humiliation of it was still with him. Anyone could have seen. He stops me in the street and demands to see my leech, like I'm a child showing my hall pass. He wriggled his hand free of Emily's. He felt too old to be sweating in his wife's palm. "Dubois is such a little shit," said Emily. "He's everywhere you turn. Dubois, Dubois." I still think he was the one who turned the McConnells in. It was a warm spring night, and the neighborhood smelled of recent rain. There would be no traffic. Harry and Emily walked to the Gronalskis down the middle of the road, with the streetlights' reflections glittering at their feet. The McConnells were stupid, Harry said. Always trying to organize. Conspiracies, coups. Ridiculous. What is this, the French Revolution? Was that the one with Marie Antoinette? I don't know. Who cares? Marie Antoinette, Che Guevara, Benedict Arnold. Back when you could just announce you were doing a revolution, and people would be like, "Oh, okay, sharpen the pitchforks." Wasn't Benedict Arnold a turncoat? Wasn't he the only one who didn't get executed? Emily laughed agreeably. Imagine the world being small enough for all that. Now it's... She waved her hand vaguely. Committees and science, experts running simulations. If we could fix it by doing a revolution, someone would have started. You know Dubois doesn't have to wear a leech anymore? He told me himself. I wish they didn't call them leeches. It makes them sound so ordinary. Space leeches. Oh shit, said Emily. Stray. A leech writhed over the pavement toward them, its alien flesh iridescent in the streetlight glow. They walked faster. Emily took Harry's hand again, squeezing it painfully. You forgot yours again, didn't you? Harry shrugged, defensive. I didn't have room for the case in my pockets. What do you have in your pockets? My phone and reading glasses. She scoffed. What do you think you'll have to read tonight? Maybe they'll want to play Scrabble, he said weakly. Well, look at it. They were faster, but it was definitely following. It can tell you're solo. If it bonds to you, Harry, you remember Carol Hennessy? She has to wear 2, since Javier... She made a cutting motion across her throat. She can't even get off the couch, Harry. She wears a diaper. I'm not going to end up in a diaper, protested Harry. Look, we're almost there. It doesn't matter. I'm not changing your skinny ass, muttered Emily as they rang the Gronalskis' bell. But then it was hugs and air kisses and wine opening, and the leech was shut out on the walk. Do you mind? Asked Anjali, opening her case as they sat down to dinner. Her leech wriggled excitedly on its velvet bed. Actually, started Harry, wrinkling his nose in disgust, but Emily interrupted. Of course not, she chirped. Whatever works for you. We've all got to pick our times. I find I get less nausea if I start it while I eat. Anjali held the leech up to her hickey-ringed neck. It twisted, looking for an unblemished spot, and finally lunged to hang under her chin like a goatee. Anjali hissed softly when it latched on. Then her eyes lost focus, and she bent her head to her soup. Bartek poured wine to distract them. "Feel free to bring yours out too, if you want." "Oh, no thank you. I do mine while I sleep," said Emily. "Don't you get nightmares? I do it at work. I mean, work is already a bummer anyway, right?" Bartek laughed. "Wild what you can get used to. Remember how chaotic it was at first, before we found a system?" "Wild times," Harry mumbled half-heartedly. Bartek grinned as though happy to find consensus. The times were indeed wild. Anjali was practically falling into her soup. "What about you, Harry?" he said. "When do you do your leech?" "Harry forgot his altogether," said Emily. She was annoyed about it. She mentioned it to punish him. He could tell. Embarrassment made Harry sardonic, and he waved a disgusted hand at Anjali. "Hey, I didn't think we were going to need them at the dinner table." Anjali snapped her head up. Her leech pulsed under her chin. "Sorry to offend your delicate sensibilities." Her voice was raspy and ugly, and she mumbled something as she looked back down that sounded like pussy. "Oh, sweetie, go back to your soup," said Bartek hurriedly. "Sorry, you know how it is. They make you feel so bad." He took a large gulp of wine. "Of course we understand," said Emily with desperate brightness. "We're all doing our best." "I mean, it's not that bad, is it?" said Harry. "It's 8 hours a day. Not enough to really hurt us for real. They're not even sucking our blood. It's just feelings or whatever. They don't mean anything. Not in any concrete way. The leeches don't give us cancer. They don't take our loved ones. They didn't, enslave us and force us to work in mines. We still have our houses, our stuff. We got a cappuccino maker. It's so fun. All the trappings of happiness are still with us." "The trappings of happiness," said Anjali in a slow voice. Her eyes were black. There was a patter on the roof, like rain. Bartek finished his wine and poured more. "Oh, don't be dramatic," said Harry. "Trappings are pretty good. Nobody gets to be perfectly happy. There are starving children in Africa. They have to wear the leech for the same 8 hours we do, and they don't get any trappings." "It really does feel bad, though," said Bartek. "Like it's sucking happiness. It doesn't even go away. It's like a dread hangover that still hasn't worn off before it's leech time again." Emily nodded sympathetically. "It's hard for everyone." "We haven't had sex in months," Bartek blurted. Harry barked a laugh, shocked and praying he wouldn't have to admit he and Emily hadn't either. Bartek seemed to take it as encouragement. He swallowed more wine. "I'm serious. I don't even masturbate anymore." He turned to Anjali. "Remember when we fucked on the roof of the arts building back in college? People coming home from the bars could hear us. They whistled and clapped, and we just kept right on going." Anjali gave him a vacant look, head lolling, but finally drawled, "I remember." Bartek squeezed her hand on the table. She was still holding her spoon. Emily darted a quick look at Harry, mouthing, "Oh my God," and Harry fought a desperate urge to giggle. Bartek, sloshing his wine, couldn't be stopped. "Sometimes I wish we hadn't all been so quick to compromise, you know?" he said. "In the movies, Will Smith punches something." "Punch something," Anjali muttered. "Fuckers." "Nobody's punching anyone," said Emily hurriedly. "Those were kids' movies. Let's not get carried away." Bartek seemed to sense he'd gone too far, but his look was scornful instead of conciliatory. "Well, sorry the trappings of happiness are enough for you. Sorry I think it's worth fighting for happiness itself. I guess I just feel like this is real life. At some point, someone's got to start swinging." He stared at Harry, who had the uncomfortable feeling that, as savage and childish as it was, punching was actually on the table. They were interrupted by a rap on the door. Everyone went quiet. Bartek looked around, worry on his face. Who could that be? "Start swinging," said Anjali. The knock came again. Bartek got up slowly, like a man condemned, and trudged to answer it. Outside was Dubois. "I am so sorry to interrupt," he said with his French accent. He wore a reflective yellow vest, like a school crossing guard. Bartek stared at him, and for a moment Harry thought he might slam the door in Dubois' face, but he stood aside to let him in. Dubois was an older man, gray-haired, and he walked with a slight stoop. Everyone stood when he entered, all except Anjali, who glowered at her soup and didn't budge. Dubois looked around. "Harry, twice in one day? What luck! And your beautiful wife, Emily." Bartek flashed Harry a panicked look. If Dubois asked to see their leeches, they all knew Harry didn't have it. Harry put on his most shit-eating grin. "We keep running into each other. People are gonna talk." Dubois ruefully shook his head. "You would not like that, perhaps, to have people talk. I know I am not loved. I am an outsider. My job? To enforce the equilibrium. It is important for the greater good, but it is not pleasant." "I mean, someone's got to do it," chirped Emily. "Rules are rules. It's a complicated world." Dubois nodded. "It is indeed. Perhaps we all occasionally feel lost in it. It's only human to chafe against the constraints of an orderly society. Of course, there is a fine line between those who chafe and those who begin to gnaw at the straps." Harry nodded. "Malcontents." "An excellent word," said Dubois. "Those who cannot grasp the big picture, who think only of themselves. Malcontents." "Such a shame," said Emily. "We all have to be team players, do our part. We're not malcontented at all, are we, Harry?" She gave him a tight smile. Harry was no fool. He shrugged. "Of course not. Perfectly content." "Bien sûr." Dubois smiled up at them. "Team players you are. I know it." "Of course. You have your leeches with you?" "Of course," said Bartek, a little too loudly. He opened his case, displaying the leech on its velvet bed. Dubois nodded. "No need to check your wife, of course. Manifestly a good citizen." Anjali dropped her spoon, making soup splash onto her shirt. "Why don't you just say what the fuck you're doing in my house, Dubois?" "Sweetie, chill," Bartek said warningly. But Dubois seemed unfazed. "It is a valid question. I do not often make house calls. It's just, well, perhaps it would be better to show you." Dubois smiled at each of them, his head slowly swiveling. "Would you mind stepping outside? Just to the front walk." What could they do? They tromped after Dubois, outside to the walk. Bartek was barefoot. Anjali didn't budge from the table. She returned to her soup, framed by the yellow rectangle of the open door. No one challenged her. They were all too busy looking at the house. It was buried, from foundation to chimney, in a writhing carpet of space leeches. They covered every inch. They hung over the doorway and filled the gutters. If anyone had opened the curtains, they'd have seen only sucking alien mouths on the glass. Every corner, every gable softened by leech bodies. There must have been 1,000 of them. Bartek gave a little moan under his breath. "You see," said Dubois, "something must have attracted them. Who knows? An unleashed body, a sense of threat. They are simple creatures, after all." He turns to them with a sympathetic look, as if to say, "We are all in this unpleasant mess together. I only hope they will not be angry with me for failing to know before they did. It is my job, after all, to maintain order." Bartek subtly edged away from Harry and Emily, onto the rain-damp lawn. Emily fished her case out, but she couldn't keep her hands from trembling. Maybe they're just swarming the way animals do. They couldn't all be here just for one person. It doesn't make sense. "That's right," said Harry. "I've never seen them do this before. They wouldn't micromanage like that. They've got better things to do. You've got better things to do too." Dubois held Emily's case in both hands and turned expectantly to Harry. "What better things might I have?" he said softly. He held his hand out for Harry's case. "Like finding real troublemakers?" sputtered Harry, pretending he didn't see. "Not absent-minded people, but people who are really, trouble, conspirators, malcontents." "That word again?" said Dubois thoughtfully. His hand dropped slightly. "That does sound exciting. Would you know of anyone fitting this description?" "Of course not," Emily said quickly. "We wouldn't know anyone like that." No, Harry agreed. But he was desperate to keep Dubois distracted. He glanced at the squirming leech house. "I mean, sure, some people are less content than others." "Are they?" Dubois cocked his head. "Not to speak of," Emily hurried to add, flashing a warning look to Harry. "Of course there's a little complaining. It's natural, venting." "Someone is complaining?" "Well, sure," Harry plowed on, avoiding Emily's gaze. "I mean, even Anjali and Bartek were just talking about how, in the movies, someone would have punched the aliens out. Just that sort of thing." Bartek gave a little gasp. He'd been edging further onto the lawn the whole time. For a moment, it looked like he might run. He glanced between Dubois, Anjali, and the open street. Dubois arched an eyebrow. He looked pleased, like a child given a party favor bag with unknown contents. "Mon Dieu! Such violent imagery." "Oh, they didn't mean it," said Emily, eyes wide. "They were just talking about old Will Smith movies." Of course, no big deal," said Harry. "Of course not. Just pointing out that there's forgetting one's leech and there's rejecting the whole system. Not the same thing. That was just a mild example." "Of course," said Dubois. "Just an example." He shifted his attention back to Bartek. "It is distressing, nonetheless, to hear talk of violence. Its effects are so unpredictable. Utmost sacrifice for some, upheaval for all. It is no civilized way. You know what they say about a fight?" "I didn't," stammered Bartek, but Dubois interrupted. "They say everyone gets hurt." He smiled at Bartek, but his eyes crinkled at the edges. "We should all be together for our little chat. Won't you invite your wife to join us?" Anjali sat alone at the dinner table, framed by the undulating doorway, hands limp next to her empty bowl. Her leech pulsed under her chin. Bartek's voice took on a pleading, wavering tone. "We don't need to bother her, surely. The leech makes her so hungry." "I believe she has finished her soup?" Bartek looked at Harry and Emily. Neither looked back. He stood alone on the front lawn, his feet plastered with wet grass. "Please," he whimpered. "Please. We were just talking about movies." Dubois put his hands behind his back, calm in his crossing guard vest, waiting. A tremor passed through Bartek, and for a moment, Harry thought he might do something wild. Flight, fight, action. But only for a moment. Then his shoulders slumped. Hoarsely, he called, "Sweetie, can you come out? We've all moved out here now." Anjali came to stand silhouetted in the doorway, thin and uncertain. Above her, the house squiggled and gleamed. "Fuck are you doing out there barefoot?" She stepped out. Dubois winced, and the leeches rained down on her. Anjali didn't make a sound. She toppled down the front stairs, and the leeches buried her. Bartek gave a quiet little whimper. His hand jerked up and then went back down. That was all he did. A soft, rubbery squeaking noise emanated from the heap of leeches. "Look what you did," Emily hissed in Harry's ear, quiet so no one else could hear. "This is your fault." She sounded disgusted. The pile twitched and roiled. Slowly, Anjali staggered back to her feet. Leeches hung all over her. Their little tails twitched in shaggy layers. They ringed her wild eyes and wriggled in her hair. She gave a sickly, broken grin. "Oh my, Barty," she said. I certainly am deep. I certainly am far down now. The leech wormed its way over her jaw and up her face. It slipped over her lips and squirmed into her nose. Her nostril bulged as it pushed inside. She snorted loudly a few times, like a child with a cold, and the leech disappeared. Bartek turned to Dubois. Please, he begged, his voice shaking. Please, sir, please have mercy on her. He sounded pathetic. Dubois shook his head, sad. I'm afraid mercy is not in my power. It is in yours, Bartek. Only you can lessen her pain now. What do you mean? Anjali gave a low sort of chortle. Do you remember when we fucked on the roof of the arts building? Her voice was distorted, like she was talking with her mouth full. Of course, Bartek said. We were just talking about it earlier. The night I fell in love with you. It was so special for you. You felt so cool, didn't you? Love. I nod and smile when you tell the story. I was humiliated, though, Barty. When I heard the cheers, I wanted to roll right off the roof. I wanted to roll us both off. That's just the leeches talking, said Bartek. Anjali laughed. There was a leech stuck to her tongue. That's why her voice was distorted. A leech is so bad, isn't it? It sucks away your happiness. But 100? Barty, that's something else entirely. She pulled her shirt up, exposing rings of leeches around her belly. There's an ecstasy in surrender, sweetheart. Let me show you. Hold out your hands. Please, baby, he whispered. Resist them. But I don't want to anymore. He looked around. Emily lurked behind Harry, as though trying to hide. Dubois gave a sympathetic tisk. Bartek's shoulders slumped. He lifted his arms, palms up. Anjali carefully plucked a leech from her flesh, lowered it over his wrist, and laid it down. Bartek shuddered and gasped. Emily flinched and grabbed Harry's hand. Her nails dug into his palm. Anjali plucked another. Oh no, Bartek whimpered. Sweetheart, run. Just run away. Run into the ocean. Run in front of a truck. Find it in you to run away from me. Anjali slumped abruptly, and she swayed under all that weight, head bowed. Her long hair fell in front of her face, tangled with leeches. But I don't want to run, she intoned, choked and gurgling. I want you to come down here with me. She placed the second leech on Bartek's other arm, and he crumpled to his knees. A wet patch appeared on the front of his pants, spreading slowly. He closed his eyes for a moment, and then looked desperately up at Anjali. He was crying. We won't be together, though, he whined. That's not how it works. I know, said Anjali. I know. She retched and convulsed, and a torrent of leeches spewed from her mouth. They splattered onto Bartek's face, latching when they landed, and he made a shocked, choking sound. He fell backwards onto the wet lawn, and the leeches worked their way under his clothes. Anjali grinned. A leech wiggled onto her eyeball, but she didn't blink. She lay down next to Bartek, flat on her back, and took his hand. They lay and looked up at the evening sky while the leeches passed between them. Harry let his breath out and stepped backwards. Emily's nails were still digging into his palm. Dubois looked up as though he'd forgotten they were there. Upsetting, he said quietly. Terrible, but necessary for the good of our orderly society. Most people in a society, do you know what they do? We didn't mean, protested Emily, her voice shaking. They do nothing, interrupted Dubois. They are simply bodies. That's what makes it a society. He stretched out his arms. But they are outliers, yes? Outliers. On the one hand, malcontents. He waggled his left fingers. And on the other, leaders. He pointed at Harry and Emily with his right hand. I'm grateful you informed me of this unpleasant matter. I hope this is the beginning of a fruitful collaboration. He held out his hand. I will take your leech case, Emily, in promise of future cooperation. There are rewards for being leaders. He looked at Harry next. And, Harry? Well, he winked. Perhaps I will walk you home to collect yours. After Dubois left with the leeches, Harry examined his palms. Little crescent divots carved into them by Emily's fingernails. She was in the bathroom, door open, taking her earrings out. He could see her face in the bathroom mirror. She kept looking back, as if expecting him to say something. The frown lines around her mouth were drawn. Finally, he ventured. They would have ended up like the McConnellys one way or another, running their mouths like that. But why did it have to be you? Her nostrils flared. Couldn't you have found another way? Or just remembered your fucking leech in the first place? It was awful, Harry. Awful. She wiped her brow brusquely with a towelette. Why not me? Harry said defensively. Why shouldn't we look out for ourselves? They were assholes. Everyone's an asshole. Dubois always prowling around. Anjali putting her leech on at a dinner party. Who does that? Cursing at us? And we had to smile and say it's fine. Why does everyone get to be an asshole? Why should we have to be the civilized ones? Emily rubbed at her lipstick. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she replied, her voice was softer. She was such a bitch, she said. Awful. And Bartek was no better. Violent talk. Where did he think it would end up? Harry nodded eagerly. Right? It's just all so big, isn't it? Enormous systems. Machinery. I get so mad at people saying, like, change starts with one person. No, it doesn't. Martyrdom starts with one person. Change is... She fluttered a hand helplessly. It needs momentum. She sat next to Harry on the bed, pale without her makeup. He took her hand gratefully. But in the meantime, look at us, he said. Leech-free, happy. And for what? Nothing that wouldn't have happened anyway. Struck by a giddy surge of affection, he kissed her. She kissed him back, and he felt forgiveness in it. She was as glad to be free of the leeches as he was, after all. He felt an odd surge of pride. He'd taken care of them both. His hands tightened on her waist. She laid her head on his shoulder. Do you feel any different? Happier? Maybe a little. I don't think I feel it yet. Maybe it'll take a while. Maybe. She leaned back to take a look at him. Should we try making love? But she didn't really want to. He could see it in her eyes. He didn't want to either. It's been such a night, he said. I would love to, of course, but let's take a rain check. Let's let the space leech toxins clear. Let's do it tomorrow. She smiled, relieved. Tomorrow. Good idea. She lay back in bed, checking her phone, and he went to the bathroom to piss. He thought about never wearing the leech again. Freedom. A fancy free heart. His cock stiffened slightly under his fingers, and he stroked it idly as he finished. It had been so long since he'd even wanted to touch himself. But why not? Self-care. He couldn't hear anything from the master bedroom. Maybe she was out there with her hand between her own legs. He stroked faster, eyes closed, imagining it. His cock responded sluggishly, out of practice. He imagined more. Wide-eyed women, eyes rolled back in their heads, easy and sweet-natured. Everything going his way. Everyone agreeable. He moved faster. A flicker of pleasure peeked around a corner. His hand became a blur. The flicker sparked. It flared, approaching the twisted surge of orgasm. Pleasure, comfort, power. It was so close. He was almost sure it was going to happen. So, Sasha, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex. It's good to be here.
So, before we get into the story, I want to ask about leeches in general. Have you ever had a leech attached to your body?
No, I never have. No, it's a horror of mine.
I'm the same way, and I actually think that I'm more terrified of leeches than of other blood-sucking creatures, possibly because I've never had one attached to me, if that makes any sense. Like mosquitoes are objectively scarier in some ways. They carry diseases and they fly around, but they're so normal. Leeches are like this weird alien thing.
Absolutely.
So, what sparked the idea for the Malcontents? Was there like a jumping off point that you started from?
Yeah, my life. Um, you know, I feel bad all the time. I think a lot of us do, and we talk about this a lot. There's this flood of bad news that comes in all the time, every day, a new disaster. You can't do anything about any of it, and it settles on you like this, like a blanket of dread that you have to wear at all times. Just the things are going badly, and you learn to compartmentalize because you can't do anything about most of it. You just sort of you find yourself wanting to turn inside to say, well, is my family okay? Can I make things okay for my people, even though it's going super bad for everyone else? Um, Obviously, that's a really dangerous and terrible way to be, but I don't know how else to be in this time. So I wanted to write about that, about the blanket of dread, and what would you do to shake it off? What would you be willing to compromise in order to feel better? Would it be becoming one of the bad guys? So I wrote this and I wanted it to be a really small story. I wanted you to not root for the main character. I don't think anybody would root for him, but to identify with him and to see how he never makes a decision to be a bad guy. It just sort of happens. He's in a precarious situation. He feels danger. He tries to divert it and things get out of hand. And before you know it, here he is on the wrong side and trying to justify it to himself. And the leeches become sort of, there's nothing to them. They have no character. They don't say anything. They're just bad feeling.
Yeah, that definitely works, especially in, as you said, the nameless dread that we feel around us. There's so much terrible news and terrible things that are happening that it just feels like this overbearing, oppressive force that you can't put a name to. So I think that really makes it work for the leeches. They have this sort of visceral quality that encapsulates that feeling. Uh,
Yeah.
do you see, I mean, maybe you've already answered this in your own way, but do you see yourself as a malcontent in today's society?
Yeah, no, I always have been. Um, and the word malcontent gets flipped around a couple of times in the story. It refers to a resistance, but it also refers to our main character who just wants to be happier, who he wants things to be going better for him personally, and does what he has to get there.
And if you found yourself in this story where you were forced to have a leech on your body for 8 hours a day, do you think that you would be like Anjali in the story and just sort of accept it and try to embrace it? Or do you think that you would try to resist it any way that you could?
That's a terrible question, Alex. Because here I am with the leech, right? This is
Yeah.
what we started off talking about, that the leech is on us now, and I'm not doing fuck all about it. One hopes that you can do small acts of kindness towards the people that you see. I can't stop a war, but I can be nice to the old lady across the street or even the guy at the end of the block with a thin blue line flag on his front lawn. I can try to do small kind things to make me at least feel better about my place with the leech. And I think the story is about that one kind thing. Can you do one thing? And this guy's answer is no.
Yeah, whatever the one kind thing he can do is to himself, which is to make himself feel better about the terrible things that he's doing.
Yeah. And you can see in his wife, who's my favorite character and complicated, she sees what's happening. She's much more in tune with what's happening than he is. And she's mad at first, but then she comes around. She forgives him. She recognizes that while she didn't have to make this decision, it has been made and she's benefited from it.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting. way of approaching the idea of privilege, you know? If you are in a good situation in today's society, one that's objectively better than others, it's still easy to feel maybe a sense of guilt about that, but also a sense of relief. Yeah, it's definitely I think a position that a lot of us find ourselves in that we don't really know what to do with.
Yeah, because there's nothing to do about it. Here we are. The world is going poorly. We're doing a bad job.
So tell me about your choices of names in this story. I know we have Bartek, which is kind of a Slavic name. We have Anjali, which I believe is an Indian name, or we got Dubois, who's French. I was wondering if you were trying to make the story feel like it could be taking place anywhere, or if that was maybe a reference to the way that people treat people from other cultures. What was your intention there?
Yeah, I mean, colonization is definitely here, as Jolie points out in her letter. The bad guy being European. I write a lot of old white European guys as bad guys. I don't know why, but I wanted him specifically to not be from around here. And then for the rest, sometimes I just try to make sure that the names of the people in my stories reflect the world that I live in. I live in a fairly international community. So I just, I want to make sure that there are a lot of different kind of people represented here. And then the main character is Harry. It rhymes with Larry, and I was thinking about Larry David. I've been watching Curb Your Enthusiasm when I wrote this story, thinking about how every episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David makes like a small selfish decision that blows up in his face, and how bad that would be in a world with real consequences instead of a sitcom world.
That makes a lot of sense, especially, yeah, in the back and forth in the dialogue. I get a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm vibes from that.
I was really channeling, yeah.
And then with Dubois, I almost pictured him as what's the character's name? The Hans from Inglourious Bastards. The whole story reminded me. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I have. It's been a while, but you're right.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of that opening scene of the movie where he's entering the farmhouse and they're protecting the Jews in the basement, and there's just like this tension where he's being very polite and normal, but at the same time is there for very sinister reasons. I don't
That's
know.
funny because I rewatched that opening scene just a few years ago. I don't remember why, but yeah, you're right. There is that very civilized inhumanity.
I guess Dubois is kind of the secret police of whatever this situation is.
Totally. Yeah, a collaborator.
Mhm. So, what have you been reading? Any good novels, short stories?
Yeah, I'm reading Ivy Grimes' new one, and it's badass.
Oh, nice. Is it a collection, a novel? I've read some of her short stories in the past, but I'm not sure about a new one.
It is a novel, and I'm looking up to make sure that I have the title right. It's The Cellar Beneath the Cellar, and it's coming out soon.
So you're an ARC reader?
In this case, no, I'm not an ARC reader. I'm gonna be going on the launch party for this book, which is on March 24th, I think.
Oh, that's
And
exciting.
uh,
And what have you been working on writing wise?
I'm trying to write a Scooby-Doo story.
Nice.
I've been in a thing lately where I've been doing this for a long time, actually. I'll pick a genre and I pick all the tropes from that genre. I list them out, and I've been just really into twisting around tropes and playing with them. I just finished a story about a circus, and the worst possible incarnation of how many clowns can you fit in this car. Uh, it's been fun and violent.
Yeah, that's a cool creative exercise. I'm sure it gets you writing stories you wouldn't have written otherwise.
Totally. What are you working on?
I just finished up writing a draft for a thriller novel. Is now with a couple of beta readers. My wife's got it. TJ Price has got it at the moment. So that's pretty exciting. I'm hoping to start on an idea that I've been kind of tinkering with in my head for a while, a draft of a cosmic horror novel about a metal band in the Pacific Northwest. Been going back and forth between thrillers and horror and yeah, I've been kind of in novel mode lately. I haven't written short stories in a while.
Do you play music?
I do, yes. I'm a drummer in a band and I'm an aspiring guitarist. I just started learning a couple months ago, actually. So, and I'm a lifelong metal fan, so I've always wanted to do my tribute to metal.
I played in bands all through my 20s, and I think the dynamics of bands are really interesting because they're so intense and dramatic. The interpersonal relationships in bands can get really wild. And I can't figure out a way to write that into a story. I've tried so many times and I keep failing. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's a unique sort of relationship. I'm hoping that I can find a way to do it right. I'm also making two of the bandmates a romantic couple, which I'm actually my wife and I are in a band together, which I think adds a whole different layer to the real world relationship. So it should be an interesting experiment.
It's a good idea. My kid is 9 and he's starting to learn electric bass and he's a huge metalhead, just really into metal.
Nice.
So it's been incredibly fun to play with him.
What do you play?
I play guitar. There's the guitar wall.
Oh, nice. Got a Strat and an acoustic. Good duo there.
Yep.
And are you a metal fan as well, or are you adapting to metal to play with your kid?
I like metal. I like it even more now that we're sort of focused on it here because metal came from my kid. I didn't do this to him. So yeah, it's a regeneration of my love for metal.
Nice. Well, for readers who really enjoyed this story, where might you steer them in your back catalog to read more Sasha Brown?
Oh, geez. My website is at, where is it at? I don't remember.
Oh, I think I've got it pulled up right now. SashaBrownWriter.com.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you. It's there. I've got coming out soon in Flash Fiction Online, one of my very favorite stories. And I've got some coming out soon in Small Wonders, my stupidest story, which is saying a lot if anyone's read me before. Uh, so a lot of fun things on the horizon.
Nice. All right. Well, Sasha, thank you so much for chatting with me. We really enjoyed the story. Yeah, glad to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I love podcasts.
Sasha Brown's a Stoker nominated author whose work has been called creative, but in a bad way. He's in lit mags like Passages North and Split Lip, and in genre pubs like Bourbon Pen and Weird Horror. He can do a sick cartwheel. Do you want to see? He's Sasha Brown on Blue Sky and SashaBrownWriter.com online. Thanks for joining us on Cosmic Goblins. You can check out the rest of Cosmic Horror Monthly issue 69 at CosmicHorrorMonthly.com. This has been a production of Randolph Literary Press. Theme music by Tyler Macklemore. I'm your host, Alex Wolfgang, signing out.